All right, y'all. So we got some pretty bad news here for CNN. This is in Mediaite. News. CNN rolls out major programming shakeup amid ratings slump. Shrinking morning show and moving Acosta to weekdays. So let me give you some of the specifics here, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. CNN announced significant changes to its morning programming, Mediaite has learned, which will be announced internally on Monday. The changes mark the end in all but name of CNN this morning. The audacious, that's not the word I would use, breakfast show launched by former CNN chief Chris Licht, Poppy Harlow, and Phil Mattingly, the current hosts of CNN This Morning, will be taking on new roles at the network. Casey Hunt, who hosts the 5 a.m. hour on CNN, will take over the new, smaller iteration of CNN This Morning from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. CNN News Central, a news program, will replace the bulk of the old CNN This Morning slot running from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Jim Acosta, who currently anchors a 5-hour stretch of weekend programming on CNN, will move to weekdays to host CNN Newsroom at 10 a.m. A new show will launch in the spring at 11 a.m., The Bulletin with Pamela Brown, who is currently on maternity leave until she returns. Wolf Blitzer, more Wolf Blitzer, y'all. Wolf Blitzer will host the hour. The new programming slate is expected to debut later this month. On the back end, the new slate means CNN will no longer be producing its morning programming out of its Hudson Yards studio in New York. The team that produces CNN This Morning in New York will be disbanded, so they're firing some people. In an internal memo, CNN CEO Mark Thompson said they will be strongly encouraging those staffers to apply for the many new roles that we are making available this week in Atlanta and Washington, D.C., along with a number of the open roles in New York and other programming blocks. So that's just a fancy way of saying they are getting fired, but if they want to reapply, maybe they'll get hired again. As for Harlow and Mattingly, Thompson said, we are also talking to both Poppy Harlow and Phil Mattingly about new roles at CNN. The changes come as CNN continues to face ratings woes that have beset the network since the end of the Jeff Zucker era and the audience highs of the Trump administration. CNN ended 2023 with its lowest total viewers since 2014 and its lowest audience ever in the younger demographic. So look, under Jeff Zucker, what happened was they really leaned into sort of being like MSNBC, at least in the sense that they're like very anti-Trump. And that did bring some semblance of an audience. They did have a ratings bump in that time frame because everybody's very negatively polarized against the other side. And so there was a natural built-in audience there among a vast swath of people. And so under Jeff Zucker, they had okay numbers. Ever since then, I mean, you guys remember they tried to do the centrist tap dance, right? Like, bro, we're going to criticize like both sides, bro. That's what we're going to do. And we're enlightened centrists. And we're going to go right down the middle, bro. Totally neutral skis. And that's just not a good idea because it's very contrived, right? This idea of like, everything is always 50-50. Everything is always 50-50. That's very contrived, and there's not really a natural built-in audience for that perspective. Everything is hyper-polarized in the current environment. And so, you know, over on Fox News, they love Trump, they hate Democrats. Over on MSNBC, they love Democrats, they hate Trump, right? Like, that's just kind of the nature of the beast at this late date. And so they tried the whole centrist thing. They thought these were good ideas with these new goofy shows, but the numbers didn't bear that out at all. Now, to be fair to them, the entire media landscape is suffering. I'm sure you guys have seen there's been layoffs for all sorts of traditional print outlets. There were massive layoffs recently. Even in some new media outlets, there were layoffs recently. Apparently, you know, the ad rates are not doing all that great, which makes it difficult for these people who rely on ads, right? So, you know, being in the position I'm in, I could tell you guys that largely because of you, right? Largely because of you and the small dollar donations you give us, we're sort of immune from a lot of those ups and downs, right? So a massive thank you to everybody who supports this show on Patreon. If you pay $2 a month or $5 a month or whatever it is, or you tip with the thanks button on YouTube. Because of you guys, you've made it so, number one, we're kind of immune. Number two, I've never had to have a conversation with an advertiser, which I'm very proud of. Doing this for over a decade, and advertisers, it's not even a thing to me. It doesn't even occur to me, right? And so I'm very fortunate in that respect. But the rest of the media is struggling. So they go on to say here, the demise of Chris Licht's morning show, which initially boasted Harlow, Don Lemon, and Caitlin Collins as hosts, marks the final nail in the coffin of Licht's boldest programming play at the network he ran for 18 months. I love how that's bold in their mind. Let's get Don Lemon, who's been on CNN since 1892, and Caitlin Collins, who's a former like Daily Caller or you know, whatever. She's part of some right-wing rag outlet. Let's bring her in and Poppy Harlow, who again is just like a CNN drone. This was your big Like, oh yeah, this will really break the ratings. Well, it didn't. And the only time that they really got eyebrows was when Don Lemon would say something fucking idiotic and it would make news because he's such an idiot. What was it? He was like, was it Nikki Haley? He was like, well, obviously she's past her prime. And they were like, what do you mean past her prime? And he's like, yeah, well, a woman's prime is in like, the early 20s to like early 30s. So she's past her prime. And they're like, are you citing prime for childbearing years? He's like, bro, prime's a prime, bro. That was like the only time they went viral is those moments, which shows you they're not really doing all that well. They say the show debuted in 2022 and featured the trio of star anchors, around a talk show table on a rosy pink set. It quickly fell apart, first making headlines thanks to tension between Lemon and Collins, then over Lemon's comments about when women are in their prime. There you go. Licht fired Lemon, Collins moved to primetime. By the way, Lemon is currently in the midst of doing the old Dave Rubin tap dance, here's why I left the left, bro. He came out the other day and he was like, just so you all know, I've been listening to like Ben Shapiro's podcast and Patrick Bet-David's podcast, and I've learned that mainstream media, of which I was a gigantic part of the machine, it turns out that they're actually liars and totally full of shit and stuff. So like, I'm going to start a new show soon and I got some stuff for you. And this is the only way he can maintain relevance, right? Be a gay black man who tells conservatives, actually, even though I'm a liberal, you're kind of right about everything. He's in the midst of doing that right now. So look, let's come full circle here and talk big picture. The thing that's most interesting about this is, number one, they're moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic here, right? Their business is flailing, it's flatlining, it's sinking, it's not doing well. They have no plan to actually get out of it. That's the first point. But the second point is, despite all of that, mainstream media still somehow is able to control the narrative and the political discourse in this country. And that is such a contradiction, and it drives me crazy. It's like, how could you be waning in your power, right? How could your ratings not be great? But also, institutionally, when it comes to politics, you guys have a much bigger role and a much bigger say and much more control of the narrative and the direction of the country than anybody in new media does. That's amazing to me. And again, it seems like a fundamental contradiction. They're waning in their power. They're kind of pathetic, but also they still are so far above and beyond in terms of their cultural and political impact, so far above and beyond what any of us in the new media landscape have been able to do. But look, I guess at the end of this segment, I'll just say what I think should be done in this scenario. If CNN actually wants to put out good programming, interesting programming, I mean, the answer is very simple, right? Have Jon Stewart host a show. Have Jon Stewart do a show. I think that would be phenomenal. It's not going to happen because he already said he's going back to do The Daily Show, be the executive producer every show, and host the show on Mondays, right? So it's not going to happen. But you would need to have somebody like Jon Stewart do an hour show or 2-hour show in whatever format he prefers, because whatever him following his heart would yield results that are good for everybody, ratings-wise and substance-wise. That's one thing. The other thing is, look, I think they made a step in the right direction when they hired Charles Barkley to do his show, but I gotta say, it ain't hitting with Gayle King. Nothing against Gayle, it's just the nature of the beast and the dynamic and the vibe of the show. I think the fact of the matter is, you need to get that NBA on TNT crew. You want EJ, you want Shaq, you want Kenny, you want Charles Barkley, and you want them sitting around bullshitting and talking politics. That should be your morning show. They're a ratings juggernaut for NBA on TNT, and everybody loves watching them. They're the most real, authentic people on TV, and they're hilarious. Why not bring the exact same crew to do a morning show at CNN? Just bullshitting, exact same scenario, just bullshitting and talking about politics. I don't even care if Shaq doesn't follow politics very closely or Kenny has some horrible opinions on X, Y, or Z. It's the authenticity of it that is the most important. And you could trust somebody like EJ to at least bring up facts and information when talking about the news of the day, right? He's the straight guy, and the other ones are the ones who are wacky and crazy and having fun and saying whatever the fuck they want. Those are just some ideas to help try to dig CNN out of this hole that they're in. But I don't think they do it, right? I don't think they do it. I think there's really no vision that's worth anything coming out of CNN. Because all the changes Licht tried to make were fucking terrible. Again, the only thing I liked was giving Charles Barkley a show, but the way they executed that I think was poor. Because it doesn't have the other guys, and he's not as free and loose as he normally would be on NBA on TNT. But I don't think they have a way out, man. I really don't. And I think that the lack of vision, but more importantly, the lack of authenticity is kind of what kills them. Even though they still get to control the political and cultural narrative and they have way more impact than anything in new media, and that's a goddamn shame. I wish that wasn't the case. I think their lack of authenticity absolutely is killing them. Because, yeah, who the fuck wants to watch some of these shows with some of these hosts? Really? You're going to drop what you're doing because you can't wait to hear what Wolf Blitzer has to say for his 14th hour that he's on air for the day? Of course not. Of course. So they're just not good at what they're doing. But despite all that, I mean, they seem to have a built-in audience and a built-in political cachet, right? Just by virtue of the fact that they're CNN and they're coasting off of their record from the 1990s, So I don't think they're going anywhere, but I think they will continue to sort of flatline in their viewership. But that's not going to stop the advertiser money from flowing in, right? Because at the end of the day, all that matters is that those advertisers prop them up, and the advertisers definitely will prop them up because they're safe. It's a safe way to spend your money if you're an advertiser on a trusted big brand like CNN. But make no mistake about it, they have no idea what they're doing, and that's why there's already colossal shakeups because nothing they have done has worked. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.